Hello everyone and welcome back to Thinkology. My name is Oz and today I'm gonna be your narrator, your local floor goblin narrator, here to steal your kneecaps and regale you with semi-useless but interesting information. So with that said, every so often we talk about creepy places or true crimes on the channel, and this one really piqued my interest. So today, that's exactly what we're doing, getting into a topic that's a little bit different, but one that I find really fascinating. So real quick, before we just jump right into this, I just want to say a lot of these words are not from my native language, so my pronunciation may be a little sour. Please, feel free to make fun of me in the comment sections as it does drive engagement. I will try my best, but no promises. Now let's jump right into it. Now today's episode is going to focus on the Houska Castle, also known as the Portal to Hell. In the 13th century, this mysterious Gothic castle was built. It wasn't near water, it wasn't strategically important, and it didn't really seem to have anyone living in it. But, according to legend, its sole purpose was to trap demons. Although, however, taking the fun out of everything, one German source states, the real reason for building Houska is actually pretty banal. Przemysl Ottokar II, who was the king of Bohemia from 1253 to 1278, had the castle commissioned with another one nearby. Now, Houska served purely administrative purposes. Mostly lands and estates were to be administered here for royal possessions. In other words, this is just a really nice giant filing cabinet. Now, sources claim that Ottokar, also known as the Iron or Golden King, used this to administer royal estates before the founding of the nearby castle of Biezdiz. Now, while Biezdiz certainly doesn't have the reputation that Houska does, some tourist sites describe the area as whimsical, even though, if I'm gonna be honest, I think Biezdiz looks far more haunting than Houska on a purely aesthetic standpoint. Anyway, Houska pretty much served its purpose, and it reportedly continued to pass hands among the aristocracy for quite some time. So, basically, they just got another filing cabinet. That's alright. Now, with some of the more bland history out of the way, let's start getting into the weird part of this. So, according to a report in Week in Weird, there are a few things that are a bit offbeat about this place. For starters, it's a castle with no water source, no fortifications, no nearby trading routes, and almost no occupants for majority of its history. It seems people have bought the place but didn't actually live in it for some reason.
Oh, yeah.
Probably because there's no water. Anyway, it has just loads of windows, but for some reason, most of them are actually fake, with the glass panes being built and then the walls built behind them. This is where things get even more interesting. Some of the frescoes on the chapel walls are some of the oldest in Europe, and they show pictures of Saint Michael fighting a dragon. Out of place, there's a strange, left-handed, half-horse creature firing a bow and arrow at a person. Now, pagan symbols weren't included in chapels back then, but usually speaking, the left hand is associated with serving Satan, and something like this is believed to be what the image is referring to. Now, I can understand why no one lived there, and why trading routes and water wasn't of the utmost importance, but if this was, as we said, purely an administrative building, even the strange artwork, I'm not sure if any of these suspicious things caught my eye. But there is something that did. Interestingly enough, sources report that the castle has almost no fortifications on the outside, but it does have them on the inside. Almost as if it was prepared for attack within, an invasion of sorts. Though those defenses have since been removed, but it's just makes me wonder what exactly are they defending against, and there's myths, legends, rumors, whispers of the occult that speak of something at the center of the castle. An endless pit, or the portal to hell itself, if you would. Now, whether or not Houska Castle was built over the portal of hell or simply its presence spawned it is something those myths and legends never quite clarify. Some of these myths and legends speak of the Duke of a powerful Duba clan. In order to discover the secret behind the mysteries of the supposed gateway to hell, offered a condemned prisoner a full pardon for his crimes if he would complete just one task. This prisoner had to consent to being lowered down into the bottomless pit on the end of a rope, and to report back on what he found there. To this, the man readily agreed, but once he had descended down into the opening for quite some distance, there came a long period of silence. And then, just as the silence came and went, the convict began screaming uncontrollably from deep within the ground. When the Duke's men pulled the convict back to the surface, they found that his hair had turned completely white, and he was stark raving mad. He died soon after, but some accounts claim this experiment was repeated more than once, with the same results each time. Now, this legend, this myth, this story repeats itself across many different sources, all stating that a prisoner was lowered into the pit, screamed, and was pulled out. He looked as if he had aged 30 years, and of course, this is just one of the aspects of the legends and the myths surrounding the Houska castle. Now, the legends surrounding Houska castle would only evolve, mutate, worsen, and become more twisted as history went on. The legends surrounding the site of the Houska castle are older than the castle itself. There's archaeological evidence of Celtic inhibition in this area dating all the way back to antiquity, and the Slavic tribes migrated here in the 6th century. The first known structure existing on this site was a small wooden fort that stood here back in the 9th century, mentioned by Václav Hayek in his extensive Czech chronicle published in 1541. In this same chronicle, Hayek also recounts a legend, the story of a strange crack in the top of a limestone cliff, a hole in the ground, unimaginably deep, and reputed to be the source of strange visitations. Local residents began calling it a hole to hell, and the villagers avoided passing anywhere near it after dark. They believe that strange creatures, half animal and half human, issued forth from the portal to kill livestock and wreak other havoc in the night. They also believe that any person who passed near the site was himself in danger of being changed into one of the creatures of the pit. These very same villagers attempted to fill the damned hole with stones, but with no success. The pit did nothing but consume anything cast upon it. Each stone dropped, no matter how many, had no visible effect on the pit. Unfortunately, this 1541 chronicle is a bit of an escape artist online. I mean, I have found it, yes, but it has a starting bid for around $3,000. I mean, you know, I might buy a documentary or a book from time to time for these videos, but like, holy hell, I am not gonna pay $3,000 for a book I can't read. Apparently though, this chronicle does discuss all the legends at Houska, and I mean, like, let's be honest, back in the 1500s, there were a lot of just fucked up and weird things going around anyway. And I mean, like, look, I'm not trying to say that the people of the late Middle Ages were idiots. I mean, in 500 years, I'm pretty sure someone's gonna look at me like a bumbling buffoon too. But, I mean, this was the time period when caterpillars were brought to court for eating plants, and other animals could also be brought to court simply for doing well. I mean, like, you know, animal things. I mean, even scholars aren't quite sure why the hell people did this back in the day. I mean, personally, I would just guess boredom. I mean, why else would you bring a caterpillar into the courtroom? But anyways, the point I'm trying to get at is that I don't think it's too far off for rumor to go around like a game of telephone gone haywire. A few people say the castle's creepy, one says there's a portal of hell beneath the chapel, and look, now we're still talking about it centuries later. I mean, hey, maybe there really is something going on down there, but I don't know. I don't think these myths being stories born from boredom are out of the question either. I mean, though some of the myths and the hauntings do seem to be born from real events, it's just, there are a lot of questions, alright? Not to mention, there are nothing but events that just add fuel to this fire. Apparently, during the 30 Years' War, 1618 to 1648, Houska fell under the control of the Swedish army. The Swedish commander, Oranto, was a cruel man who led his men to plunder the surrounding countryside, and was also rumored to practice, holy shit, rape as a sport. What a goddamn monster. He was based in the castle for a time, and it was rumored that, being aware of a source of power underneath the castle, he conducted a number of rituals in order to try to achieve immortality. His spells, which apparently included animal sacrifice, were of course not successful. Not to mention, of course, the locals, enraged by his behavior, offered a reward of 100 gold to whoever would kill him. That's a Skyrim quest. 2 local huntsmen shot him through a window, and he died in the main hall. What a bitch. his ghost is said to still wander the castle in anger. Good. Now, while that is a, awful story with a satisfying end, I haven't been able to prove there was a man named Oronto that did this though. I don't care if I'm saying his name wrong, he's a monster! So take this as you want, I don't know if I'd put too much stock in it. Well, anyways, after the 30 Years' War, the Habsburgs ordered the sliding of various castles and fortifications across the region. This included the Houska castle. The outer walls of the castle and a Gothic tower were demolished, with the building rubble used to fill the castle moat. So it did have some functional outer defenses. Now, the castle of Houska would mostly be forgotten, left to the sands of time. The occasional renovation here, but mostly just left to be in disrepair. However, as the raging fire of World War II approached, Houska Castle found itself in the sights of a new occult interest. When the German army came, they confiscated the castle with the help of the regional staff of the SS of the Reich Main Security Office, an organization subordinate to Heinrich Himmler, who would become known as the architect of the Holocaust and Hitler's right-hand man. The castle would find its image further twisted, but for now, it was nothing but a repository for housing archives and documents, mainly Jewish and Masonic books from Europe. The Nazis occupying the castle certainly didn't help its reputation at all. Rumors of supposed occult Nazi activities also became a part of the castle's legend. The chapel was meant to keep demons and beasts from spilling out of the portal to hell, but given Hitler and the Nazis' obsession with the occult, some may say it only makes sense that this place may have been of particular interest to them. Now, having an interest in the supernatural or the occult is one thing. However, the Nazis didn't seek to understand, they seek to weaponize it. Their obsession wasn't one of fascination, they only saw it as a potential weapon and justification for a race war. Himmler, the head of the SS, went the farthest, setting up the Unravel, the Institute for Ancestral Research, which combed Germany and occupied Europe for records and folklore to support his ideas of Aryan heredity. The SS even had a witch division, responsible for bringing home evidence of witch trials and wizardry. Witches, Himmler argued, represented an old Germanic religion that had been cruelly wiped out by Judeo-Christian religion, with an emphasis on the Judeo portion. In Himmler's castle of Wewelsburg, which was fitted out like the occult lair of a knightly order, he employed an elderly sage named Willigut, who claimed to be descended from the gods. In return for copious rations of drugs and booze, Willigut, who went by the name Wise Thor, would provide stories about telepathic deities, ancestral white supermen, in a time when giants, dwarves, and mythical beasts moved about beneath a sky filled with 3 suns. The Nazi high command was wedded to these peculiar mixtures of science and occultism, whose history Erich Kurlander deftly traces in German popular thought from the 19th century onwards. As early as 1904, he notes, the leaders of the Volkisch movement were hoisting swastika flags, advocating a race war with Judah, and promoting bizarre blends of Germanic folklore and the science-fictional occult. So, needless to say, when the Nazis came to Houska, it only served to fan the flames of new legends, that they were using these powers of hell for experiments. After the war, the castle went back to the sense of Joseph Simonek, president of the Skoda Works, who bought the castle in 1924 and turned it into a summer residence. Yeah, that's right. Houska Castle was a goddamn summer home. This portal to hell was pretty much a vacation home. I mean, I guess it could have been a winter home too. You could just open up the chapel floor and you'll never get cold with the portal to hell right there. I mean, unless you're looking at the classic form of hell, which is actually just a cold, barren wasteland. But anyways, as of 2020, the castle is still owned by his descendants, Joseph's that is, and went through renovations throughout the years, and now, to no one's surprise I'm sure, it's a tourist location. The guests that have visited, however, claim to experience hauntings and strange events when they visit. Now, if we look at some more modern-day sources, such as ghoststories.co.uk, they report that in the inner courtyard there are 3 skeletons of German soldiers who were unearthed, and all 3 had been executed. But my only problem is that a lot of my other sources don't mention this, so, take it as you will. There have been German soldiers at the Prague Castle, and, but that was in 1928, and I didn't see Houska mentioned, so, maybe it's a misinterpretation of things, but whatever. However, the same source also goes into account of some of the more personal encounters that the guests have had while visiting the Houska Castle. There are accounts of guests seeing a line of people chained together walking towards the castle, each person along the chain having a horrific injury. Some people were said to be carrying their heads or their body parts while a giant black dog was biting and attacking the poor souls strung along the chain. Some of these sightings were reported to have lasted several minutes. There's even reports of a prominent writer staying at the castle by the end of the 1800s. He reported that he saw black winged creatures flying around the inner courtyard, which at the time he believed to be demons. It's even reported that some dogs behave strangely in the courtyard, almost as if they're spooked by something. Even the workers of the castle have reported that in the inner courtyard they've heard voices coming from the chapel. Upon investigation, there's simply no one there. However, from time to time reports slip through of a dark figure of an unknown male can be seen from the upper floor, looking down upon them. It is here that it's believed that the Germans carried out their experiments in this room. The whispers of demonic entities that are said to be seen in the chapel, with their strange moaning, screams and voices in many languages, are said to be emanating from below the chapel. Witnesses over the years have claimed to see something in the area of the chapel that looks like a cross between a human, a giant frog, and a bulldog. I mean, sounds like something straight out of Warhammer if you ask me. But moving on. On the third floor, the ghost of a beautiful young woman in a white dress has been seen. She's often peering out of a window. No one knows who she is, but she appears to be the most normal of all the apparitions around the castle. One particular report from Zina Verzalova states that her and her husband were staying in the hunting lodge, relaxing in the room when they heard a strange noise, like something heavy hitting the floor close to them. Zina turned around and saw two dark figures on the stairs that had no distinguishable features. She believes one of them whispered something about killing some young girls. Even this cellar has its own legends and stories. Now known as Satan's office, the cellar has a throne embellished with horns and a trident, and from time to time, a black-robed, faceless priest has been seen materializing in front of the throne and walking up the steps before vanishing. Now, okay, this source also says the castle has been proven to be defiantly haunted instead of definitely, so, I mean, honestly, I'm not really 100% sure how much I can trust this source. All the experiences that have been cropped up may have some truth to them, but, I mean, it could also be people seeing what they want to see too. I'm not really sure we'll ever know what happened there when the Nazis were in charge of it, but it's not a ridiculous thing to assume it wasn't good either. And I also don't think it's too far out of the picture to believe that people might just be seeing what they want to see. They expect the castle to be haunted, to be creepy, to be scary, and human mind's a weird thing, plays tricks on you. I mean, even in modern times, we can see Houska Castle being featured on Ghost Hunters International. The folklore was the inspiration for a Doctor Who graphic novel, and it's part of different cruises and tours to this day. It's the greatest source of tourism in Houska, and according to TripAdvisor, it's the #1 thing to do out there, out of one thing. So, I mean, I guess Houska's pretty quiet. And in even more recent modern times, Houska Castle isn't holding up very well on TripAdvisor, receiving some lower reviews saying it used to be creepier and used to have a room full of dolls. And I mean, like, yeah, that's pretty damn terrifying, but I don't think that's really historically accurate either. I mean, a tour guide leading to a room and just, here's the room full of dolls we stole from children. Not too terrifying, just kind of like, all right, that's interesting. Honestly though, the castle really does look gorgeous and has quite the aesthetic behind it. Now, some people may say it's haunted, but personally, I just can't buy that. I mean, yes, it has some creepy legends and folklore behind it, but at the end of the day, that's all it is. Legends. And now, I can't say for sure this place doesn't hold the pit to hell. I mean, I don't think it does, but still. It's a really beautiful place, and for some reason, if you find yourself nearby, God forbid, just give it a visit. Please don't go digging under it, alright? Anyway, that's where I'm gonna end today's video. Make sure that you, give this the good old subscribe, the liking, and, I really do appreciate you making it this far. I'm Oz Media. You can go check out my channel, and as your local floor goblin, if you do the liking and subscribing, I might just give you your kneecaps back. Anyways, I'll see y'all in the next one. Later.